You are listening to 600 Saga. Today's feature is The Pexagon by D.J. Roselle. We were sitting in a bar on McDougal Street celebrating John's dissertation defense in mathematics. Letting off some steam, John was harassing our friend Eric, a physics grad student. Of course you can construct a polygon with non-integer number of sides. It's called a star polygon. A pentagram is one example. It has 2.5 sides. Don't look at me funny. Wikipedia it when you're sober. Oh, please, you mathematicians are always hiding simple ideas under a pile of symbols. Here, watch this. Eric pulled a pen out of his pocket and grabbed a napkin. He took a showy, deep breath, closed his eyes, and drew a quick figure. He then handed John the napkin, who scoffed. So what? You can draw a decent pentagon. I looked down at the napkin that John had tossed on the bar and decided to join in on the ribbing. John? Maybe you're not quite ready to graduate. That's a hexagon. John looked at the napkin again, this time confused. Eric started laughing. Minutes later, none of us were laughing. How the hell did you do that? I asked. I have no idea. Eric looked both scared and excited. I was going to make a bad physics joke. You know, something can exist in multiple states until it's observed, like Schrodinger's cat, so I just emptied my head and decided to draw a pentagon and a hexagon at the same time. The joke was supposed to be that it would have 5.5 sides until we looked at it. But I don't understand. Once a wave function collapses, it's supposed to stay collapsed, not pop back into superposition. Honestly, I thought the whole Van Neumann-Winger interpretation of quantum mechanics was just hand-waving. As we talked, we kept looking at the figure on the napkin that randomly became a pentagon or a hexagon whenever we all looked away or blinked. Eric never did publish a paper on his discovery. He had no explanatory theory or reproducible data. Eric tried drawing another Pexagon, as he started calling it, but he failed despite many attempts to recreate the exact conditions. He would stay up for days, imbibing all manner of substances. They only added to his frustration and desperation. Worse still, a scanned copy of the napkin resulted in either a pentagon or a hexagon that was unremarkably stable. All Eric could do was put the thing in a protective case and show anyone who would listen, which turned out to be nobody of importance. Everyone just wanted to know how the trick worked. Eric stopped his doctoral research to focus on his Pexagon. He also mostly stopped grooming, and then even fewer people wanted to listen to his story. I'm embarrassed to say that neither John nor I was brave enough to be helpful. That would have been the end of the story, if not for an email a year later from a 20-year-old Buddhist monk who had heard about the Pexagon from a friend who liked myth-busting websites. He wanted to demonstrate to Eric that he could draw a squangle at will. In need of a vacation and hoping the trip would put an end to this unhealthy obsession, I agreed to pay for the tickets. We flew to Thailand with wildly divergent expectations. This time, I was the one humbled as we walked into a monastery on the outskirts of Bangkok. A single window bathed a small room in humid light, illuminating a cot and a white wall filled with charcoal drawings that randomly flickered between squares and triangles. Shortly thereafter, Eric opened the Institute for Quantum Art, where he gathered the 1 in 10 million who could draw a squangle or pexagon. Eric and his artists became quite wealthy, selling their astoundingly unforgeable works. Pexagon watercolor paintings sold for 6 figures, and the waiting list to get $1 million squangle tattoo was years long. The crowning achievement of the Institute was the creation of the first spheube after a year of continual effort by a resident retired topologist and 30-year Zen practitioner. He swore he would never attempt such a feat again, and the spheube promptly sold at auction for $250 million. I went to see it when it was on loan at the Museum of Modern Art. It sat on a pedestal behind security glass in the center of a small, white-walled room. Only one visitor was allowed in at a time, so that person could enjoy watching the lump of modeller's clay randomly become a cube or a sphere every time they looked at it. Of course, some people are immune to success. Eric's depression returned when he was snubbed, as he described it, for the Nobel Prize in Physics. Rather than revel in the aesthetics and mystery of his work, Eric poured all his newfound wealth into training the quantum artists to work in a quantum foundry. He believed that if he could create a metal Pexagon on an axle, the next step would be a quantum ratchet, and mankind's quest for free energy would be attainable. I warned him of the history being full of successful scientists wandering into painful dead ends. Newton's attempts at alchemy, or Haber's efforts to extract gold from seawater. But people are who they are. The foundry was abandoned after 2 years. Eric would have persisted, but he had alienated all his quantum artists by then. A month later, Eric died of unknown causes. I assume he planned it that way. A final, ironic gesture. The obituaries were respectful but sparse. I was alone when I visited his grave last week. The headstone was inscribed with only his name and a shallow etching that randomly flipped between a circle and a lamniscate when you blinked. I wished I had just thrown that damn napkin away. This was The Pexagon by DJ Roselle. DJ Roselle has wandered around the world of engineering and science for many years, and is now a professional dilettante, or a polymath if you ask his mom. He mostly writes non-fiction and some science fiction in New York, and can be found on Twitter at DJ Roselle. Check our show notes for links. Music is provided by Mads. Learn more about 600 Second Saga, our authors, how to submit your flash fiction, and how to support the podcast in the show notes. This has been Mariah Avix and 600 Second Saga.